Are you serious? Do you know how long we've been planning this? And now, at the last minute, you're canceling everything, leaving me to go by myself? Do you even realize how awkward that'll be for me? Haven't you tried to find another solution? Can't someone else take your place? Vera, this deal is worth over $2 billion and I'm in charge of the project. You know how much effort we've poured into this over the past year? No one else can step in for me. The outcome of this project affects countless jobs. I'm sorry, I know it's hard for you, but I promise I'll make it up to you with the bonus we'll get from this deal. I hate seeing you upset, but there's nothing I can do. To say she was upset would be an understatement. She stopped speaking to me and told me to sleep in the guest room. Before my trip, there was no intimacy or affection. Her anger and cold demeanor were unusual, and I couldn't figure out how to ease the tension. That night, I prepared for my trip and went to sleep in the guest room. I knew how significant the wedding was to Vera. Her best friend Carol had endured immense challenges. During a life-threatening illness, Carol's ex-husband cheated on her and left, claiming he couldn't handle watching her suffer. His cowardice devastated her and worsened her situation. After a miraculous recovery, Carol filed for divorce, feeling abandoned. The following 5 years were filled with depression, despite the support of friends and family. Then one day, while grocery shopping, she met someone who brought joy back into her life. Carol rediscovered herself, and her loved ones' prayers were answered. Now, Carol's fiancé, Brandon, deeply loved her, and everyone was thrilled about their beautiful wedding. Vera, as Carol's best friend and maid of honor, had stood by her through every struggle. I knew this was important to Vera and didn't want to miss it, but my hands were tied. I promised myself to find a way to make it up to her and calm her anger. The next morning, before leaving, I tried to kiss Vera goodbye, but she had locked the bedroom door and wouldn't open it. I told her I loved her and that I'd call as soon as I landed in Germany. Receiving no reply, I dejectedly headed to the waiting limousine to take me to the airport. Her lack of understanding made me feel awful. After 19 years of marriage, I had hoped for more patience and compassion. Before boarding my flight, I called her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I left an apologetic message and sent another one just before takeoff. When I landed 10 hours later, I tried again, but there was still no response. No calls, no texts. I knew she was furious and that winning back her trust would take time. Worried, I called our twin daughters at college. I explained my change in plans and mentioned their mother's anger and silence. I asked them to check on her discreetly to ensure she was okay. They reassured me they would and said they loved me. My daughters had always been daddy's girls, and I cherished them deeply. When I arrived in Germany and settled into my hotel, I contacted the general director for updates. To my dismay, the meeting had been canceled due to a personal tragedy in one of the partner companies. I immediately booked the next available flight to Chicago, which was only half an hour from the wedding venue. I figured I could arrive by 9 p.m., just in time to make an appearance and show Vera I cared. After picking up a rental car, I followed the GPS to the reception. By the time I got there, the celebration was in full swing. Loud music filled the hall, people were dancing, and champagne flowed freely. The atmosphere was joyous, with over 200 guests celebrating. Despite the vibrant energy, I only wanted to find my wife. I made my way to the open bar, ordered a double bourbon, and scanned the crowd for Vera. Reflecting on our history, I thought about how we had come to this point. Vera was 5 years older than me and had been through a divorce when we met. Her ex-husband, Dr. Clayton Adams, was a resident at Mercy Hospital during their marriage. She had caught him cheating with a nurse and promptly ended the relationship. The betrayal shattered Vera's dreams of a happy family with children. After the divorce, she struggled financially, earning meager wages as a waitress. Her difficult past gave her a deep understanding of the pain Carol had endured. When I met Vera, I fell for her instantly. She might have been broken at the time, but to me, she was an unpolished gem. I noticed her undeniable beauty, but it was her kind heart and compassionate nature that truly won me over. I helped her rebuild her life, turned it around completely, and gave her 19 years filled with love and joy along with our twin daughters. Vera appreciated my serious approach to relationships. We often talked about loyalty and commitment, which made her feel secure. I assured her of my faithfulness and made it clear that I would never tolerate betrayal. I admired her strength in leaving her unfaithful ex-husband, despite how difficult it must have been. I explained how many people might stay in such situations for the sake of their marriage or financial stability, but she chose to move forward. This mutual trust and determination formed the bedrock of our marriage. Before this wedding, my life was wonderful, filled with love and satisfaction. Vera, at 44, looked incredible, while I, 5 years younger at 39, was in the best shape of my life thanks to regular gym sessions and 5-kilometer runs. I was thriving physically and mentally. Vera had an amazing figure, and our intimate life was exceptional. The age gap between us was never an issue, and it rarely came up in conversation. Over the years, we raised 2 incredible daughters, Mara and Carrie, who were now in college just 4 hours away. They were thriving, enjoying campus life, and preparing for their futures. We had built a happy family and what I believed to be a solid marriage until the moment I saw my wife sitting with her ex-husband, Clayton. I knew Clayton was one of Carol's friends, but I hadn't expected him to attend the wedding, let alone be there alone without his wife. Exhausted from my journey and curious about their interaction, I stood at a distance, observing them. They seemed unusually comfortable together, reminiscing about their past. I continued watching, trying to figure out what was going on. It didn't take long for my world to fall apart. Just as I prepared to approach them and interrupt, Vera stood up, took his hand, and led him to the dance floor. She looked stunning in her form-fitting ivory dress, and I desperately hoped it was nothing more than a dance. But her boldness left me speechless as they swayed to several slow songs. I sipped my drink, waiting to see what would happen next. It was obvious she'd been drinking. Her flirtatious behavior was a clear sign. After a few drinks, she usually became playful and flirted with me, which I didn't mind. But seeing her openly kiss another man, her ex-husband, was unbearable. Everyone there knew she was married to me, making the situation even more humiliating. My anger grew as I watched him grab her inappropriately while she responded eagerly. Seething, I wanted to confront them, but before I could act, they returned to their table and sat off to the side. To my disbelief, they began kissing like teenagers, with his hands roaming freely while hers disappeared under the table. At that moment, it hit me. My marriage was over. My father's words echoed in my mind. Respected men never tolerate disrespect. I resolved to handle the situation without causing a scene or resorting to violence. I could have interrupted them and ruined the wedding, but why bother? If she wanted him, she could have him. She was no longer mine. Feeling strangely calm, I took out my phone, zoomed in, and captured several clear photos and a short video. Then, I sent her a text message. Great news, darling. The meeting has been postponed, and I'm back. But it seems you're in good hands tonight with Dr. Clayton. Now I understand why you didn't answer my calls or texts. I'm heading home, and I assume you'll be spending the night with him. Tomorrow, when you return, I won't be there anymore. Enjoy the end of our marriage. I pressed send and waited to see her reaction. From across the room, I noticed the notification light up on her phone. She glanced at it, then picked it up, scrolling to find my message. Her expression quickly changed, and she seemed to sober up immediately. As she processed the text, I quietly walked out of the reception hall and headed to my car. Just as I was unlocking my car, I heard her scream, "Tony, please wait!" I gave her a cold look, shook my head, got in, and drove off before she could reach me. My phone began ringing almost immediately, but I had no intention of answering. If she wanted to be with her ex, it was over between us. In truth, after what I'd just witnessed, our relationship was already done. 22 years after divorcing Clayton for cheating, she had thrown herself back into his arms the first chance she got. Let her explain everything to the family and our kids. This was entirely her burden to bear. Dozens of frantic text messages started flooding my phone. "Tony, please, come back. Let me explain. I love you. Please don't leave." Another said, "It wasn't what it looked like. I love you." But after 2 days of exhausting flights, unanswered calls and messages, her cold treatment, and finally witnessing her betrayal, I had no patience left for her apologies. By the time the 20th call came through, I was more furious than ever and wanted nothing to do with her or her excuses. I paused and sent her a single reply. My message read, "Go to hell." Things in my life were going well. My job was thriving. My kids were already in college with their tuition covered, and nothing was tying me down. I still had time to start fresh. On my drive back to Nashville, I stopped at a diner to grab a quick meal and rest in my car for a bit. While eating scrambled eggs and bacon, I made a decision to share my feelings with the world. Between bites, I updated my social media status from happily married to single. Then I uploaded 2 photos I had taken during the wedding. One showed Vera and Clayton locked in a passionate kiss, while the other clearly captured his hand on her chest. Below the photos, I wrote that Vera was negotiating her way back to her ex-husband, and that I was ready to move forward. Yes, it was childish, but I felt it was honest. I was done with her. The most absurd part was that Clayton, her ex-husband, was nearly 50, balding and overweight. He was no improvement in any sense of the word. What could she possibly see in a man like him? Maybe she preferred being with a doctor over an accountant. In truth, it hurt deeply. In that moment, I felt a pain sharper than anything I'd ever experienced before. I was angry and heartbroken, but I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous it all was. She was throwing away a 19-year marriage for a man who had betrayed her more than 2 decades ago. Let them have each other. They deserved it. I wasn't the kind of man to tolerate such disrespect. Some might say it was just a kiss and nothing worth ending a marriage over, but in my world, loyalty is absolute. Either my partner is faithful, or she's free to be with someone else. We all live with the choices we make. After finishing breakfast and getting a 2-hour nap in my car, I hit the road again and arrived home at 7 a.m. As soon as I turned on my phone, it began buzzing with countless notifications. It seemed like the messages would never stop. There were easily over 100 from her, her family, and her friends. 5 minutes later, the phone started ringing. It was Vera. I couldn't tell if she'd slept at all or spent the night with Clayton, but it didn't matter. I ignored her calls and focused on packing up the essentials to leave. I had always gotten along well with her family, so when her father called that morning, I answered. I explained everything, saying, "James, I had no idea she was unhappy, but her betrayal was a fatal blow to our marriage. The public disrespect she showed is unforgivable. It's clear she still has feelings for that man, so now they can be together. I need to find someone who values what I bring to a relationship and stays loyal. I have no choice but to move out today. The house will go on the market tomorrow, and I'll contact a lawyer to begin the divorce process. She can stay here until it's sold, and I'll make sure the divorce is fair. Call me old-fashioned, but I won't share my life with someone who wants to be with someone else." She made her decision, but I don't think it was a smart one. James arrived about an hour later and pleaded with me to speak with her before making such a final decision. He asked me to give her a chance to explain, but I told him to look at the photos again. They showed them openly caressing each other at the wedding. I couldn't accept that. The fact that it was her ex only made it worse, a deliberate slap in the face. James was disappointed in her actions and in my firm decision to move on so quickly. When I entered the house, it hit me that our once happy home was now just an empty shell of our marriage. Over the past 5 years, we'd worked to turn it into the perfect sanctuary. Back then, mortgage rates were below 2.99%, and the house's value had doubled. As the account holder, I refinanced for the full value, pulling out nearly $500,000 in equity. I set up $200,000 trust funds for each of our daughter's college expenses and kept some extra to give them a good start in life. The remaining $100,000 was used to renovate the house, making it a home we were proud of. Thanks to the lower interest rate, our monthly payment only increased by $1,700, which wasn't difficult to manage. Vera returned to work as a secretary to help with the extra expenses. My salary was decent, not extravagant, but as the newly promoted CFO, I was set to receive stock options the following year, which would become our retirement fund. Vera had never shown interest in our finances. As long as she had what she wanted, she was content to leave the details to me. I had tried explaining stock options to her a few times, but her lack of interest was obvious. I'd laugh it off, knowing it wasn't important to her. I was optimistic about our future. The merger tied to my promotion, which coincided with the end of our marriage, was supposed to grant me stock options of up to 40,000 shares. Assuming success, I'd have to wait a few years to use them. But the projected 100 per share price gave me confidence in our financial security. Since the merger was delayed, those stock options wouldn't be part of the divorce settlement. I planned to file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and simply split what we owned. This included about $50,000 in our savings account. The proceeds from selling the house would have been shared, but with the mortgage fully utilized, there wouldn't be anything left to divide. At 44, Vera would walk away with her car and $225,000. If she had remained loyal, she could have enjoyed a stable, happy life with a secure future. Instead, everything was about to collapse. My anger and humiliation had completely smothered any love or fond memories I'd held onto. Revenge was all I wanted now. Revenge, and for her to realize what she had thrown away. As for Vera's perspective, seeing Clayton after 20 years stirred a mix of emotions. It brought back memories, some sweet, some bitter. He had been a good husband until his infidelity ended their marriage. There had always been a spark, an undeniable chemistry between them, along with great intimacy, but it wasn't comparable to what she had with Tony. Tony was more attractive, a better partner, and someone she truly cherished. So why, she wondered, was she sitting with Clayton, allowing him to kiss and touch her? She knew it was wrong, but kept flirting. The alcohol definitely played a part, and she convinced herself that Tony should have been there with her. She scolded herself for not being smarter and putting a stop to it. Yet the familiarity of being with Clayton felt comforting. A little harmless flirting wouldn't hurt, she rationalized. After all, Clayton was divorced now, and Tony had chosen not to adjust his plans to attend the wedding, even though he knew how much it meant to her. She justified her actions as having a little fun. After one more kiss, she felt a rush of warmth, remembering the way he used to hold her while they danced. The area was secluded, most people were drunk, and she thought no one would notice. A few more kisses and touches wouldn't lead to anything serious, she told herself. She would make amends with Tony when he returned. Then her phone buzzed. It could be Tony, she thought, checking in. But when she read the text, her heart sank. Tony had arrived and he was leaving. Panic set in as she realized he must have seen her and Clayton together. She quickly apologized to a bewildered Clayton, claiming she needed to use the restroom, and hurried out of the reception area. Spotting the exit door closed down the hallway, she ran as fast as her high heels allowed. Reaching the street, she saw Tony getting into his car. "Tony, wait!" she cried, but he ignored her and drove away. She chased after him, but it was useless. Calling him repeatedly, she sent dozens of frantic texts, but he didn't answer. Finally, his only response came through, "Go to hell." Two of her friends found her kneeling on the freezing pavement, distraught. When she explained what had happened, they were shocked and worried, knowing Tony's stubborn nature. They feared trouble would follow after he had seen her and Clayton together. Meanwhile, at 10 a.m. the next morning, Tony was back in Nashville. After gathering his belongings, he sat at the kitchen table and drank the last cup of coffee in the home they had built together. The moment was filled with bitterness and grief. Leaving the empty cup in the sink, he scribbled a short note telling Vera not to call him. They could talk once the divorce papers were ready. He didn't even bother signing the note, leaving his wedding ring on top of it before walking out for the final time. Opening his laptop, he split their finances, canceled their shared credit card, and paid off the balance. From that day forward, Vera was on her own. If she fought the divorce, she would have to handle the mortgage and bills by herself. With the house in demand, it would sell quickly if priced right. If she didn't contest the divorce, the process could wrap up swiftly, and she could return to Clayton. Tony left the home, stepping into an unfamiliar and uncertain future. Later, friends from the wedding informed him of what happened after his departure. They told him Vera had fallen into despair. Her sobbing was so intense that she eventually passed out from a mix of alcohol and exhaustion. Her friends, deeply concerned, took her back to her hotel room, put her to bed, and checked on her throughout the night. When Vera woke early the next morning, the events of the night before came flooding back. Overwhelmed by regret, she began calling Tony repeatedly, pleading for forgiveness. He refused to answer her calls or messages, unwilling to engage after what he had witnessed. On Sunday, Vera returned home. Battling a splitting headache and terrified at the thought of divorce, she landed at noon, where her father was waiting for her at the airport. She later learned that Tony had told her father he wouldn't be picking her up and that she needed a ride. Judging by the worry on her dad's face, she must have looked terrible. Her father was her pillar of support, and when she saw him, she ran into his arms, sobbing. "Dad, I messed up," she cried, "and I think Tony is going to leave me." With a heavy heart, her father consoled his broken daughter. "I spoke to him earlier today, and things aren't looking good." "You know, Tony, what were you thinking? And with Clayton?" "I don't know," she replied. "I was upset and drunk. I was mad at Tony for not coming to the wedding. I know I messed up, but he has to forgive me, Dad. I didn't even sleep with him." "Sweetheart," he said, "from the photos I've seen, it might as well have been the same thing. Tony isn't the forgiving type, especially when it comes to something like this. You know how he feels about cheating and being with another man the way you were in those pictures? Well, that's betrayal." When Vera got home, she prayed Tony might be there waiting for her. Deep down, though, she knew him too well and understood he was long gone. The rest of the day passed in tears, with her repeatedly calling his phone, hoping he'd at least let her explain. The situation's cruel irony hit her. She had betrayed Tony with the very man who had betrayed her years ago. Tony, the only man she had truly loved, and the life she had cherished, seemed to have vanished in an instant. His wedding ring and the brief note left on the table were the only things left behind. Meanwhile, Tony's day continued. He moved into a corporate apartment intended for out-of-town clients. Since it wasn't being used, he explained his situation to the CEO, who agreed to let him stay there. The CEO, Bill, was a good friend who had gone through something similar years earlier. Bill even suggested Tony delay his plans for the year, saving them for a better time. The following day, Tony went to his office on the 16th floor. Knowing Vera might try to find him, he informed security to escort her out if she showed up. When she appeared on Monday, security turned her away, ensuring there would be no interaction. Desperate to speak with him, she tried everything, but Tony wanted no contact. Vera, now isolated and filled with regret, found herself lonely and scared about what lay ahead. Tony's daughters, concerned for their mother, called him repeatedly, pleading for him to talk to her. Calmly, he explained that Vera had chosen another man, and everyone knew how he felt about infidelity. Before they could argue, he clarified that what she had done was, in his eyes, unfaithfulness. The girls, understanding his stance, chose not to push further. He told them he would always be there for them and wanted to keep them in his life. However, he urged them to remember this lesson when they married. Never disrespect or betray their husbands, as most men wouldn't tolerate it. Tony's life took a surprising turn after he shared his story on social media. Alongside calls from friends and family asking for details, he found himself suddenly popular with women. Back on the dating scene, Tony began engaging with younger, energetic women, something he hadn't experienced in years. Gone were Vera's complaints and tears, replaced by passionate connections, flirty texts, and cheerful companions. A month later, Tony met Cheryl, who would become his future wife. They hit it off immediately, and a few months after his divorce was finalized, Vera learned of his new lifestyle. Jealous and angry, both at herself and at Tony, she regretted not being given another chance. But Tony had refused all her requests for meetings, communicating solely through their lawyers. Eventually, the house sold, and after property fees and closing costs, only $1,000 remained, which Tony ensured went to Vera. Though his lawyer fought for better terms, the court based their settlement on his average earnings, dismissing potential future income. Since Vera was employed, Tony agreed to pay $2,000 per month in alimony for 2 years. It wasn't a large amount, but it was enough to help her get back on her feet, or find someone else willing to marry her. Over the years, Tony never spoke to Vera again, using lawyers as intermediaries. Vera later moved to Chicago, where she joined a support group and reconnected with the aging Dr. Clayton. Living with him, she realized she would never find the same happiness she'd had with Tony. Her anger and selfishness had led her down this path, and though she hadn't slept with Clayton that night, she knew she had made the wrong choice. 3 years later, at their daughter's graduation party, Tony and Vera crossed paths. Vera, now 47 and visibly aged, arrived with Dr. Clayton, who wisely kept his distance. Tears welled in Vera's eyes when she met Tony's 28-year-old pregnant wife, Cheryl, and their 1-year-old daughter, Jolene. Later, Vera managed to find a moment alone with Tony. "You never gave me the chance to apologize," she said, her voice trembling. "I should have known better. Not a day goes by that I don't regret my stupid actions that weekend. We had everything, and I threw it all away for nothing. You were the perfect husband, and I destroyed the beautiful life we shared." "That's all in the past now, Vera," Tony replied, "and I forgive you, but I never imagined you'd end up in his arms while I was away working to secure our future. I want to express my gratitude to you. You gave me 19 beautiful years and 2 incredible daughters, and I will always cherish you for that, Vera. The truth is, your betrayal led me to Cheryl, and building a new life with her, along with Jolene and our newborn daughter, helped me let go of the anger I held toward you. Now, you need to focus on yourself and plan for your future. What we had is behind us. It's part of the past. I wish you the best, and I look forward to crossing paths at important moments in our daughters' lives." At that moment, Cheryl approached, holding our little girl in her arms, and I introduced them. The age difference between the two women was striking. At 47, Vera could have easily passed for Cheryl's mother. Once again, regret washed over Vera as she thought about losing the man she loved due to one night of anger and selfish choices. Over the next decade, we encountered each other at our daughters' weddings. Vera never remarried, but continued living with Clayton, who treated her well. Each time she saw me with my new family and our 2 little girls, she was reminded of the sweet memories we had shared. The happy life she once enjoyed was now gone for good. In the end, she settled into a quiet life, burdened with the regret of losing both the love and joy she once had. As one final act of closure, that summer, after I exercised my stock options, I repurchased our old house when it came back on the market. My friends and family, excluding Vera, were thrilled about reclaiming the home that carried so many fond memories. My daughters loved visiting, reminiscing about their childhood and recalling the love that had once filled the walls of that home. It's unfortunate that Vera chose a different path. She would have appreciated being part of this chapter and sharing the life we had envisioned together. But life moves forward, and I'm enjoying creating new memories and building a fresh life with my amazing wife and my little girls. Here's a simple rule to live by. Before you betray me, make sure I'll never have any reason to rely on you again. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. See you in the next episode of Cheating Secrets. Take care of yourself and those you love. Goodbye. Welcome to the Cheating Secrets channel. My dad gave me some valuable advice when I started dating. He said, "Son, men who are highly respected never tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or lies from women. Always believe in yourself and maintain your self-worth." Bad news, darling. The merger meeting has been moved, so I have to leave tomorrow morning and won't be back until late Sunday. I know how much this wedding means to you, especially since you're a bridesmaid. But you need to understand I've just been promoted to financial director. Missing this meeting isn't an option because it's critical for the company and our future. You'll have to go without me. I'm really sorry.